Well, let's get more on this now with Sudan analyst Jonas Horner. He joins us now from Melbourne, Australia. Good to have you with us, Jonas. This, on the surface, seems to be a promising development. It's just past 2 p.m. local time in Khartoum right now. This 24-hour ceasefire is supposed to take effect at 6 p.m. local time, so in about 4 hours' time. What do you make of this latest development? Who was behind it?
Well, I know that the United States have been quite strident about their insistence on having this ceasefire, but my sense is probably that Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates will have been key to the communication with both of the principals that you've named in your package, General Burhan and General Hemeti. The ceasefire, there's concern about just how readily that will be respected. There have been 3-hour quote unquote pauses that have been mooted for both of the previous two evenings, and they have not been well respected. Those pauses were meant to allow people to reach food, water, stock up on supplies, because everyone really in Khartoum and beyond in areas of fighting has been stuck very much inside their houses, and there's a lot of desperate situations. And so, we're waiting to see really whether the ill discipline, mainly of the Rapid Support Forces, will carry us through this ceasefire. But certainly this ceasefire has a higher profile and certainly much longer length than those two trial ceasefires that we've seen over the last 2 days.
As we heard from Claire's story previously, fighting has raged on for 4 days now between the two sides, the army and the RSF group, who were allies back in 2019 as they worked together to oust the longtime leader Omar al-Bashir. Explain to us what went wrong between the two sides. How did that once strong relationship deteriorate over the years?
Well, it's always been a marriage of convenience in many ways. The military, on one level, in the wake of Bashir's ouster, could agree on the interest in being able to pick up the scraps from the 30 years of Omar al-Bashir, in which, it must not be forgotten, both were, complicit and integral. So, what has happened since then really is a realization, with Bashir in the rear-view mirror, there's a realization that, with a shrinking economy, a shrinking economic pie, and real demands from the respective constituencies of each of these groups, primarily riverine elites who will self-identify as Arab for the Sudanese Armed Forces, and Islamist sections from the old guard on the SAF side, and on the Rapid Support Force side, you see many Sudanese from the long-suffering peripheries, the margins that have been kept out of politics and power for so long. So, ultimately, the constituencies of each of these two militaries have realized that there is an existential battle here for control of the country. Will this land in the center with the Sudanese Armed Forces and their constituencies, or will this land more readily with the long-suffering peripheries who have sought a seat at the table in Khartoum for so long?
So if this planned 24-hour ceasefire does take effect in a few hours' time, beyond that 24-hour period, what can be done to ensure that perhaps the two sides agree to lay down their arms on a more longer-term basis? Does some sort of a deal need to be struck, or is one group ultimately looking to prevail over the other?
At present, both of their heads are down with a goal of a military victory, and current results of the fighting to date have shown really sort of mixed outcomes on both sides. It's very hard to say who has the upper hand as things stand, and that points us towards a much longer conflict. But at least for the first day or so, the phones of both of those principals were off. I think they wanted to put their heads down and fight it out, and they had apparently faith in each of their forces' own ability to undertake that. Realization of the sort of evenness of how evenly they are matched may come home to roost, and that would be the catalyst for coming to the table and undertaking negotiations. But I don't see that being particularly in the near future, beyond a very serious effort coming from Abu Dhabi and from Riyadh, from the UAE and from Saudi Arabia. They are the forces, along with the United States, who really need to put pressure on both of these gentlemen to step aside. I think the last thing to say on this is that perhaps one of the main main drivers, perhaps, and messages that we can deliver to them as the international community is that they have, in many ways, ultimately now disqualified themselves and each other from any place in Sudan's government going forward. And I think that messaging should be delivered, as soon as possible.
Okay, Jonas Horner, we'll have to leave it there, but great to get your analysis. Thank you again for joining us.